point out my braid. I was gonna show you how long my braid has gotten. I haven't cut my hair since January? I don't know, but anyway, braid. It's the source of pride for me. Hey, it's Mo. As always, I'm so glad you're here. I'm calling this kind of a late bird review because there's lots of early bird reviews. Everybody tries to get theirs out first, and I mean, I totally watch those, so I totally get it. This one has taken me a little while to formulate my absolute opinions on, so I didn't want to rush it. And you've heard about this palette. I'm sure you've seen reviews of this palette, but I just felt it might be useful. You may want my input, so here we go. It is the Natasha Denona Glam Palette, which is reflecting my, you can see my fall tree there. This came out, oh, I'm gonna say a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago even, and tons of reviews are out there already. It is a cool tone, mainly cool tone palette. People were pretty excited about this. And when the promo pictures came out for this one, it didn't grab me. A lot of people were really excited about it, and I was just kind of like, that's nice. Those aren't probably the colors I'm most drawn to, and if you watch me, you know I like purples and I like bronzy shades and warmer shades or whatever. But I like the idea of cooler shades. But it didn't really draw me in, but I did think it would be useful to review for you. So truthfully, that's why I bought it. It wasn't really like pulling on my heartstrings, but I thought that a review might be helpful to you. So that's what I want to do today is tell you what I think about it. I got it when it released, so I've been using it for a couple of months on and off, and trying to figure out what I really think about this, and is it worth the $65 that it costs. This is, by the way, one of the midi sized palettes from Natasha Denona. The original palettes have much larger pans, and they cost $129. Then there's the minis that are $25, and then there's this kind of medium or midi, M-I-D-I size. So the packaging is lovely. It's kind of a, I don't even know what I'd call this color. It's kind of a gray, but there's a little hint of like almost pink underneath. Very shiny. You've noticed that, I'm sure. It's very similar to her other palettes of this size. It has a very nice mirror, and then these are the shadows. And again, I feel like you've probably seen these. You've probably seen them swatched. I've taken a lot of time deciding, frankly, do I like this palette? Do I think it's worth the money? Or do I really think it's not? And it's been kind of a challenge for me to decide that for a variety of reasons. The first is very obvious. This is not exactly my color story. These are not the kinds of colors that really bring out my eye color. They work pretty well with my skin tone, but they're not the ones that just, you know, feel like, oh, this is so comfortable. This is exactly what I want. Also, I think there's a lot of shimmers in here, and I don't think there's a ton of depth in this palette. So those are kind of, you know, those are a lot of things, right? Color story, it's not enough depth, maybe there's too many shimmers. So how did I make my decisions? Well, I made my decisions by trying this over and over in a variety of ways, and truthfully looking back at a lot of those pictures and saying, did I like the look? Was it difficult to get that look? Is that a look I would do again? That kind of thing. So that's kind of where my brain is when I'm looking at this palette. There are 5 mattes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're pretty standard, I guess I would say. This is the deepest, called Lash Line, which is kind of a charcoal, kind of a brown charcoal, I guess is how I'd call it. Like when I use this literally as a liner on my lash, I don't feel like it has quite enough depth to it. I probably would prefer in this case a really deep brown or perhaps a black. I'm not someone who feels there must be a black in a palette. I know some people absolutely feel that way. I can kind of go either way, but this shade kind of just didn't quite get there for me for that purpose. So the mattes are this one, which is light, but for a lot of people not light enough for a brow bone highlight. This one is supposed to be kind of in the crease, and this is smoke, and this is blend, and then this is lash line. We'll talk about the naming just very quickly. I don't want to get too deep into that because a ton of people have talked about it, but as I think you know, Natasha Denona named these shadows based on the placement she recommends on the eye. So inner corner, outer corner, center lid, lash line, blend, crease, etc., etc. I don't love that idea, for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think there are rules with makeup. I've talked about this before. So if I see all these colors, I'm going to use them any way I please. And even if you're directing someone and trying to simplify it for someone, you have, I think it's a little tricky to consider, well, where would this person want it on their eye? Like, what result do they want? And, you know, a lot of people have talked about in terms of skin tone. From what I've been able to determine, this is laid out for a medium skin tone. And I am basing that on the fact that on Natasha Denona's Instagram, she shows ways you can rearrange the palette, you know, because all of these pans are magnetized, and you can just pop them out. There's pinholes in the back. Pop them out and rearrange it to match, you know, the name that you want. So the only place I've seen that is on Instagram. And there's one for light, and I believe there's one for deep, but I think that's it. So this isn't set up for light skin tones, according to that. It's not set up for deep skin tones. So that leads me to believe it's set up for medium skin tones. And I don't understand how this would be a transition color on a medium skin tone. I frankly don't find it a transition color on me. And I'm a pretty fair to light person. So I'm not sure about the whole naming thing. I'm not wild about it. Oh, the other thing I will say is that if she was gonna have it so you could rearrange it, I think that should have been included with the palette and shouldn't have been kind of an afterthought on Instagram, but enough about that. So the actual colors, it is not 100% cool palette. You know, over here we've definitely got warmth. You know, you take these out, these four, and you've pretty much got a cool tone palette. This one has a little bit of warmth in it. I'll swatch it for you. I believe it's been swatched like all over the place. They do feel quite lovely. They are lovely, lovely shadows. That was very inelegant the way I reached in there, but you get the idea. So they, you know, they're very good quality. I do not deny the quality of these at all. They feel beautiful just across the board. I must say this shade that's called Transition I find just generally confounding. I don't know what that to me is the one odd choice in the palette. But regardless of what it's called, I just think it's an unusual shade. And not unusual like, ooh, that's so unusual, but like, how does that really work for people? Maybe it's your favorite shade, and you can tell me down below. That'd be awesome. I love hearing what you guys think, because I just like to, you know, talk about makeup all the time. 3 left. 1, 2, 3. If every eyeshadow I owned felt like this, I would be a very happy person. The formula is beautiful. It truly is beautiful. So there we go. Most of it lives in mid-tone land for me. And I'm sure you've seen much more impressive swatches than this, but as you know, I only use natural lights. It's a cloudy day, and I want you to see what they look like live and that kind of thing. So there's the swatches. One of the things I noticed when people were doing first impressions or doing reviews was that they would do like 4 looks with this palette, and I truthfully couldn't tell if they were all different looks or not. That's probably the thing that I've had the most difficulty with, is that I don't think there's a ton of range in this palette. I felt like the bronze palette, I gave a huge, like, happy review to the bronze palette. I felt like for me that had a lot of options and a lot of surprise choices that she included. This one, I don't see a lot of surprises. It's kind of like a very straightforward, here you go palette. So for me, this isn't as exciting, I guess I'll say, as the bronze palette was. But what's been interesting is that I was quite certain after a couple of weeks, I'm like, this just isn't that great. All the things I just said, right? But the more I used it and the more I looked at pictures of me using it, the more I realized that I liked every look that I got out of this palette, which genuinely surprised me. And most people that I have seen review it talk about how it really leans glam, it really leans smoky, you know, special occasion. I feel just the opposite. I feel like this is such a Monday palette. Like, I can throw on a shimmer and I'm good to go, or whatever I throw on. I haven't had a highly dramatic look. I could make one if I really wanted to, but I don't feel like that's the majority of the looks in this palette. Now, I don't know why I feel that way and other people don't. But for me, this is a use it every day kind of palette when, you know, you're not looking for anything too colorful or too out there or too glam. It's kind of weird to me that this doesn't actually strike me as that glam. It's just kind of like I put some colors together and that's nice. And you know, today when I did this, we'll say look, I don't think it's much of a look, but you know what I mean. I stayed away, or tried to stay away from the shades that I'm naturally drawn to. Anything with pink in it, I'm always drawn to. I'm definitely more drawn to the warm side than the cool side. So I used all cool side colors today, and I'm very pleased with this. And look at this inner corner highlight. Like, I don't even do inner corner highlight that much, but I must admit, I kind of like this. So just quickly talking you through what I did, I used this as a transition shade. I went in and used this kind of on the outer corner and into the crease, and this was on my outer corner. I used this one in the center, and then I used this in my inner corner. And I did use a little bit of this just on the very, very outer corner. So you can see, I mean, I didn't do anything major with this. I wasn't trying to come up with any like outrageous look or whatever, but I'm pleased with the way it turned out. So I do feel there's a certain consistency to using this palette. And the looks that I've gotten, I don't think if you saw them, you'd think, that's really different than that, or that's really different than that. In fact, I'll put some up right here and you can decide for yourself. But it's consistently good, and it's consistently coming across as attractive and pretty. That's basically what I think of this palette. So should you spend $65? That's a really big question, and particularly now as more brands are coming out with cool toned palettes. You may have noticed ColourPop came out with Stone Cold Fox. I sincerely doubt the quality of the ColourPop palette is going to be equal to this. This is truly effortless. This is truly effortless to blend, to use, to put on the eye, from shimmer to matte to whatever. So it's going to kind of depend on, number one, is this your kind of color story? That's number one, because there hasn't been a lot of this color story in recent years, right? So that's exciting for people. Number two, is it in your budget? Actually, that's number one, but is it in your budget? Keep that in mind. Or are you just kind of, oh, it's Natasha Denona, it's so exciting, I must have it. And do you feel like you're going to get enough out of this in terms of variety, or in terms of, I'm going to use that every single day? And maybe that's perfect for you for that amount of money. So quality-wise, absolutely recommend it. If it's your jam, which isn't even a term I use, in terms of colors, then you might really enjoy this. Or you might want to wait and just get something in similar colors that doesn't cost so much. And I hope that was helpful. That is my only purpose here ever. I love to sit around and talk about makeup, and I love that you're here. I hope you are at peace today, and I'll talk to you soon.